listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro, the place to learn about new technology and technological advances before they become mainstream. This podcast is sponsored by Ingram Micro's Imagine Next. It's not about the destination. It's about going someplace you never thought possible. Go to imaginenext.ingrammicro.com to find out more. Let's get into it.
Welcome to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. I'm your host, Shelby Skrhak, and our guests today are Brian Boche, Channel SE leader, and Tony Lawry, Channel System Engineer, both of Nutranix. Brian and Tony, welcome.
How you doing?
Fantastic. Great to be here.
Well, welcome to the show. So, today we are talking about how Nutranix can help Ingram Micro partners and resellers. But first, I want to do just a little bit of an introduction to Nutranix for those who maybe aren't familiar with it. So, Brian, tell us a little bit about the company.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be here today again. Thanks for having us. Nutranix was founded in 2009 with 5,000 employees now worldwide with offices in 43 countries. We're HQ'd in San Jose, California. And at the end of the day, Nutanix unifies private, public, and hybrid clouds to power customers' businesses and solves for complexity with simplicity. And that's an important point, right? That a lot of this stuff, as we know, has gotten really complex. And we really try to make this simple from a compute, storage, networking, and database solutions, right, at the end of the day. So 4 quick points I'm going to make. Number 1, we have a distributed architecture to manage all of those from a top-level single pane of glass. Number 2, we simplify the deployment of those, be able to view, remediate, and scale from Cloud Manager, right, which is our orchestration tool. Number 3, public cloud functionality and reliability without the complexity and the cost. Now, I'm not saying there's not a place for cloud or cloud first. There is. In fact, most recently I came from AWS, so definitely get it. However, right, we can run Nutanix, right, our AOS and AHV hypervisor on bare metal today at AWS and shortly here later in October on Azure, right, for a true hybrid cloud solution. Point and click provisioning, management, and portability from private to public cloud for a true hybrid environment. Last but not least, with our latest release of 6.5, ton of performance increases, as well as now we can support any workload. Maybe you've heard some of the FUD out there, right, that talks about HCI is only good for these certain corner cases or only these certain workloads. Tony will talk a little bit more about this later, but we are in a perfect position now to support databases, objects, files, end user computing, you name it, right? Doesn't matter the workload, we can support it. So a little about where we are, where we got started, and what we do today.
Well, yeah. And, Brian talks about, HCI, hyper-converged infrastructure, Tony. So I wonder if first off, if we can just kind of break that down a little bit. I mean, we cover a lot here on B2B Tech Talk, and we've had, just a couple of episodes on HCI. So before we get into maybe the how and the why of Nutanix, can you break this topic down for a little bit? So, I mean, at its core, what is hyper-converged infrastructure and what can it do for a company?
This is a great question because hyper-converged infrastructure takes a 3-tiered infrastructure and condenses it back down into a 2U chassis and creates a scalable solution, right? So we're talking about what, AWS and Google and all of them do out in the cloud, but bringing it back down into the data center. So all your compute, your RAM, your storage, all combined into one. It's in a nutshell.
Yeah. Well, so, what is then the differentiator here? What is different about Nutanix and why is it a great choice for Ingram Micro partners and resellers to talk to their clients about?
Well, we're talking about playing nice in the sandbox, really, right? Our Acropolis operating system has been removed from that kernel space and put into the user space, which now gives those partners and customers the option to run whatever they want, wherever they want, whenever they want, right? So, if you have ESXi, right, and you still want to run ESXi, guess what? Bring it. Nutanix has it. We're ready to facilitate you. If you're a shop that is, privy to using just Dell or another hardware manufacturer, guess what? You can use it. It's one of those things where we're very flexible. We want to make things simple for you so that when it's time to grow your infrastructure and build those projects out, you don't have any worries. Bottom line.
So the understanding then what specifically is what some of these offerings from Nutanix are. I wonder, Tony, if you can expand a little bit on what are customers asking for? What do they need? And what are some of these new offerings that Nutanix can provide?
Well, customers are looking for a way to manage their infrastructure, right? And break free from the operational day-to-day frustrations, right? Those pain points of trying to keep the lights running, right? Or just the lights on. So, Nutanix is basically that infrastructure that removes all those pain points, right? Multiple panes of glass. I was one of those guys in the field, boots on the ground, managing my infrastructure with 4 or 5 different monitors, right?
Yeah.
We have a Prism interface, right? That's HTML5, which gives you everything in one pane of glass. And then when it comes to managing your infrastructure, when we come talking about patching, upgrading, we have one-click upgrades. Your whole team basically can be working from within the same pane of glass. So when it's time for your network guy or your storage guy to go on vacation, it's no big deal because your team is so used to looking at this ingenuitive interface, right? And then on top of that, when it comes to fault tolerance, resiliency, right? It's all point and click for the most part, right? When I say we make it simple to run your infrastructure, right? On top of that, we have a distributed storage fabric, which now gives all the deduplication, the replication, the cloning, the tiering, the lifecycle management out there without, again, complexity. I can't, say that enough.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, that's important. I mean, one problem we don't have is an overabundance of technology personnel and support. We need all the help we can get. So being able to create something that, like you said, is on one screen, it's important, right?
Yeah. So, and also when it comes to running those different hypervisors, right? If you're an ESXi shop and you want to try on using AHV, we have a one-click conversion. So, let's say that, you're at the end of your licensing with one of the other products out there, one of our competitors' products. We make it, again, click the easy button, the simple button, and it's intuitive, okay? So when it comes to working within these interfaces, when it comes to moving your workloads and all of that stuff, leave the heavy lifting to Nutanix. We want you to really focus on the projects out there that are going to keep your business making money.
Right. I wonder if you can speak to a little bit, Tony or Brian, the security, because, of course, security is always has been a concern, but gosh, nowadays it's downright scary. So how does Nutanix help with the security pieces of this?
Well, okay. Well, when it comes to security, our security is ingrained, right? It's not bolted on. Like a lot of products out there, you have to go out and buy another piece of software to manage the software within. Our whole system is fully integrated. So when it comes to microsegmentation or knowing how to mitigate a breach, knowing what happened to that file, who touched the file last, it's all there within the system in the same pane of glass. Again, our Flow Security Central product is a number one. It runs with the best of them. It gives you the visual input that you need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And in fact, the actual interesting piece, it shows that visualization of what Tony getting at, right? So I can see which VMs can talk to which other VMs, right? And we're tracking them by that, not by IP address, not by MAC address, right? It's inherently built into the kernel of the operating system, right? So we're tracking VMs, who can talk to what, and visualize that, right? With a red line and a green line of who can talk to what on which port. Encryption, right? Encrypting that data at rest, encrypting it while it's in flight, and getting to that zero trust model. And it's not that we don't play nice in the sandbox, to Tony's point earlier, right? If you're a big Palo Alto shop, a Juniper shop, right? Fortinet, whatever the case may be, and you want to do an additional inspection, right? We can simply just add rules to flow that through an L4 through L7 inspection model. right? So that's another piece of the puzzle that we're not just looking at the hard outer shell and north and southbound traffic. We're mitigating east and west, as well as funneling that traffic through additional engines if you see fit.
So then what happens if you already do have, like you said, Fortinet or any of these others? You're not required to basically kind of reconstruct things. You can use what you have. Am I understanding that right?
Yep, absolutely. So whether it's northbound, right, up to a physical appliance, right, to be able to inspect that traffic, and or, right, all of those vendors I rattled off have a virtual firewall, right? And you can run that, of course, in a hypervisor of your choice that Tony called out earlier. And you can run that traffic east and west through those virtual appliances as well. But yes, it's inherently built into our solutions that you can move that traffic through any security inspection that you would like.
Well, Brian, let's talk about partners, Ingram Micro partners, the resellers. They're looking for solutions for their customers. Now, those could be larger enterprises, or they could be small SMBs. What's available for? Well, I guess first let me ask: is Nutanix appropriate for both those categories, enterprise and SMB?
Yes, absolutely. Right. So I talked earlier about any workload, anywhere. Right. That's us. Right. Again, the flexibility and the choice of running it on any platform. I don't care if you're a Lenovo shop, HPE shop, Dell shop, doesn't matter. Right. As well as small, medium, and large. Right. We have very large organizations running our solution, and we have smaller organizations running our solution. So that's number one. Two key points I want to point out here for our partners that are listening today. Number one, we give you the ability to compete uniquely. Easy for me to say. Compete uniquely. What does that mean? Unmatched freedom of choice with a mature ecosystem of validated technology and alliance partners to build the perfect solution to your customers, right? The fact of the matter is once you get into this data center space, whether you are today, Mr. and Mrs. Partner, or you plan on getting into this space, right, is that you are much more sticky to that customer than selling point solutions, right? You're selling an architecture of the future, right? Again, public cloud capabilities in your private data center with the ability to stretch and migrate to get to that hybrid solution where you can keep some private, you can put some in the public cloud, and you're actually managing that from that central cloud manager solution. That's number one. Number two, profitability, right? Let's be honest. We get up in the morning, right? We love to do these things. We love conference calls and emails, but we also need to make money at the end of the day. So earn and grow profitability along the customer engagement lifecycle. It's not just the first transaction, right? We are now a software subscription model, right? For stickiness with those customers, renewals, additional software pieces that you can just add on. Yes, at the end of the day, there are servers that run this solution, but it's about the software and the recurring revenue that you build with those software subscriptions. The last thing I'll say here is the ability to make money and partner with us, right? We are 100% channel, right? There is about a handful of customers that go direct, full stop, right? 5 to 7, I think, is the last number I heard. Everything else goes through the channel. So some of the things that we have in place is our Elevate program, right? Robust training opportunities through Nutanix University, rebates, right? To be able to fund your business with marketing development funds and so forth like that, as well as, right, the ability to size the opportunities yourself, right? We have an entire tool and training around that to build an accurate solution for the customer around storage, compute, memory, and so forth. And the best thing about that is we actually have a technical account manager at Ingram that can support your partners that are listening today.
Well, as we do start to wrap up our episode today, we always ask our guests the same final question, and that's where do you see technology going in the next year? So, we know that's broad, but where do you see this technology or anything else that you're keeping an eye on going into 2023 and beyond? Let me start with you, Brian.
All right. I was actually going to hand it over to Tony as he's he's the smarter one, right? I lead the team, definitely nerd in heart, but Tony's out in the front lines. We'll start with him.
Oh, so yeah. I would say, look, the world's a gigantic data set these days, right? So everything depends on how much storage you got, even down to your phone, right? When you look at your phone, when you go to purchase a phone, it's like, how much storage do I have here? And how much am I going to have in the cloud? But along with that, I would say that it's performance. It's really being able to serve up that data as fast as possible to those end users, right? I mean, even when we talk about, in just the retail market space, right? Being able to serve up those websites and serve up those changes in a flash, it's very important. So I would think, technology as it evolves, we're going to find faster and faster and faster. We need more speed day in and day out. So I think that's where we're going to be really focusing a lot of our time. I mean, security is always a big thing, and that's always going to be, one of the first initiatives. But I really lean towards, performance.
Brian, how about you?
Yeah, no, I think he brings up a good point, right? And what I want to go towards is that hybrid multi-cloud scenario, right? So a guy that goes back to my route switch security days, I spent a majority of my career in that space, to then cloud, as I mentioned, I was recently at AWS, to now here. One of the main reasons I came here is because of two things. One, the simplicity, right? And I want to beat the dead horse. I think we've been very clear on that. But driving simplicity is hard, right? And we abstract that complexity with the software that we deliver to be able to give that scenario, as I mentioned earlier, the public cloud utopia, without the complexity of refactoring and reforming your solution, right? Your application for that. And two, right, the right sizing of that. So today, what a lot of our 3-tier architecture competitors are still asking them to do is bring out their 5-year, 7-year crystal ball and say, hey, how much storage are you going to need? How much compute are you going to need? Because you can only buy this box once. You can't add to it later, for example. I'm not saying that all do that, but some do. In fact, for us, we can simply just grow. We scale out. So talking about speed, right? The hockey stick, Moore's law, right? The dies are only going to get so small, right? The memory is only going to get so fast, right? At the end of the day, turning those knobs is slower and slower. So being able to scale up by just adding additional boxes seamlessly, point and click, and you've now expanded your compute, your memory, and your storage solutions, it's a no-brainer, right? So the utopia of being able to do that and then finally bring those workloads to the cloud when it makes sense, for economies of scale, for speed to market, whatever the case may be, you can do that without having to learn a whole nother operating system, a whole nother set of tools. You can simply do what you understand in the simplicity of Nutanix.
All right. Well, if our listeners have any questions about what we talked about today, how can they reach out?
Yeah, you bet, Shelby. So they can find us at Nutanix.com. There's a partner portal there for all of our partners to log in and get access to that Nutanix University I mentioned with all the great trainings that we have. So that's where they can find more about our solutions and our partner portal. As far as specifically understanding more of our technical pieces and getting in contact with Tony, I'll hand it over to him to share his contact info.
Yeah, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn at Tony Lawry, as well as reaching out via email, tony.lawry@nutanix.com.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate all the time and your insight today, Brian and Tony. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in and subscribing to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. If you like this episode or have a question, please join the discussion on Twitter with the hashtag B2B Tech Talk. Until next time, I'm Shelby Skrhak.
You've been listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. This episode was sponsored by Ingram Micro's Imagine Next. B2B Tech Talk is a joint production with Sweetfish Media and Ingram Micro. Ingram Micro production handled by Laura Burton and Christine Fan. To not miss an episode, subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform.